Hello, and welcome to this evening's edition of Neural Flow for Developers. My name is Dan. I am a cloud solution architect at Microsoft, focusing on data and AI, but I've spent most of my life coding. And I thought I'd show you tonight some of the techniques I'm working on to enable the use of something called chat modes, which is a preview feature in Visual Studio Code and with GitHub Copilot, to remediate my tech debt. This is just one of the many skills I've started to build up over the last few months, leveraging all of these advanced features that are coming into GitHub Copilot to just take away some of the tech debt. So what we got here today is a Visual Studio Code window. I am using the Insider Edition. You could use the older version, but I like to use the Insider. And what we've got is a .NET core application. It's a pretty simple CLI-based application. The job of this application is to take a relational database and extract the schema from it and then enrich it using AI. The mechanism of that is not too important, because what we're going to do is we're going to demonstrate how we would use GitHub Copilot to keep on top of the tech debt of this product, identify gaps and issues, and then get all that work assigned to our GitHub coding agent so I can get it done while I'm asleep. So what I've done here is I'm using this fantastic new feature called chat modes, which allows me to create a custom chat mode in GitHub Copilot Chat. Many of you will be familiar with the existing chat modes, which show up down here in GitHub Copilot Chat. There is Ask, Edit, and Agent. I spend most of my time in Agent. That is where I get my work done. But there are these custom modes you can also create for your specific scenarios. I like to think of them as maybe personas with specific instructions that you control. And in this case, I've created myself a janitor. As you can see, I've got some other ones, some planner, specification generator one. I've got one that helps me work on Azure Verified modules for Bicep, and one for building semantic code, kernel.net code. But the custom chat modes that you choose, you can define at the workspace level, or you can create them just personally for yourself. I've created these in the workspace because I need to use them over and over. So how do I go and create them? Well, they're actually really easy. They're actually just text files. We can go and click ... and say configure modes down here, and it'll ask us, do we want to create a new mode or edit one of our existing modes? And when it does, it'll go and create a new file in the .github/chat modes folder. Now, the chat mode I'm going to specifically use is Janitor mode, because what I want to do is I want to identify if there is any technical debt issues in a specific part of my application that I want to go and deal with tonight. One of the parts of my application is the repository. Now, that is how we store the schema, the semantic schema, persisted onto disk or into storage or into a database. At the moment, that is relatively untested. There's lots of gaps. It's not a particularly mature piece of code. So I'm going to use my janitor. But what does my janitor actually look like? So it is very familiar if you've used any of the other things like prompt files. We have a start with a description, which describes the purpose of this particular chat mode. We can define tools that this chat mode can use. Obviously, don't give it everything. Give it only the tools that it might need. One thing about these custom chat modes to point out is they are not like agent or edit modes. They can't actually write code or edit your files, even if you give them tools to do so. They're there pretty much just to provide guidance. But there's a trick. You can actually switch one of these conversations using one of these modes and switch it to an edit mode or an agent mode and have the follow-on executed by an agent. So in this case, my janitor mode, you're in janitor mode. Your task is to generate technical debt and remediation plan for specifications, codes, tests, and documentation. Don't make any edits and just generate a plan. You don't have to say this, it's just to clarify. As I mentioned, it can't. I've broken it down into processes. Step 1, identify the technical debt. I've given it some what exactly it should identify with technical debt, things like the impact of the debt, the risk of changing it, an explanation, what would be required to change it, and so on. I've also given it some examples. Examples are really good for these models to say, what do I consider technical debt? You know, there's certain things you might say, that's not technical debt to me. I don't worry about that. It's not something that matters to me. But I've given it indications like, you know, out-of-date APIs and well-structured or non-modular code, and even just outdated or missing documentation. You know, often just the docs, the header of our functions are missing. I've then asked it to generate a summary before we do it. And then following up, I've said that you can use the create spec tool to create a specification for the technical debt remediation. Now this is TBC. The create spec tool is actually a prompt file I've created, which allows me to create a specification file, which go down here in my specifications folder, and define the exact specification for a component or part of my system based on that specification prompt. It's a very powerful tool. I'm not covering it today. Maybe I'll cover it in a future session. But in this case, my janitor is going to execute my task. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask my janitor to review what janitorial work is needed for the semantic repository. I could, of course, done it like this and said, hey, what janitorial work is needed for the semantic repository? And as you can see, I've done a bit of a misspelling in there, but it should be enough to get it going, because I've given it so much grounding and context. This enables it to understand what it's going to need to know, even if it doesn't know all the details. So this may take a little while, but remember, it's not going to make changes. It's going to search our repository, so we do need some of those core tools. As I noticed up here, I've given it access to the code base, finding files, doing GitHub searches, usage. I could give it other tools if I chose to. But as you can see, it's given us a bit of a summary. Now, interestingly, I could probably make that a little bit wider so you can see, and you can see some of the ease of recommendation ones. They're all 3 or 2. Some of the impact ones, the ones that we want are really, impact 5, ease of remediation 2. So they're easy to remediate, but they have a high impact and a high risk. So it's going to give me a summary here, which is great, still working. And what I might do is decide, you know what, I really would like to, notice anything, yeah, clearly some bad missing tests in there. What I really want to do is I want to improve my testing. It's a 3 across the board, but I'm going to flip down here. It's still working. Oh no, I think it's done. So I'm going to flip from janitor mode to agent mode. Now with agent mode, I've already set up some MCP servers, right? I've set up the MCP server for GitHub, which is really important. But what I've also done is I've got a prompt file, which we look up here, for creating a GitHub issue for unmet specifications, and also a GitHub issue feature. So I might use that. I've switched to agent mode. That's important because I want to be able to actually do stuff. I don't want to go generate a GitHub. Actually, I'm just going to say, I'm not going to use either of those because they are for very specific scenarios where we've got a specification. We're going to create a GitHub issue from that, or we're not meeting the requirements of a specification. In this case, we just want to increase the tech debt. So create a GitHub issue using the create issue. I don't have to tell it the tool, it'll probably figure it out itself. And the Now I've actually put an issue template in called chore request. And this I like to tell it it's a chore, make sure it's a chore. You don't have to, it'll probably figure it out, but I'm using the chore template. And for remediating the, what do we call it? It was the technical, it was the testing, we'll just call it, we'll find all the way up here. It's a great job, does a very thorough job. For the insufficient testing coverage, for the insufficient testing coverage. Right, so I have created the MCP server. As I mentioned, I've actually added this to the repository. You could add it to your globally, to your user environment. I add it to one of my repositories, my workspace, simply because I work across many different things. I want to be able to scope my tokens, my GitHub personal access tokens. There's a number of different reasons for doing this. But if I go and have a look at my Visual Studio Code, my MCP, expand that out, you'll see I've got my GitHub GitHub server there. My personal access token you can't see. I've created it and it's scoped to this repository. I have started the tool. Well, it should have started. I am going to, it's confirming, can I run this issue? And I'm going to say, yeah, allow in this workspace. So I've permitted my agent to create this issue. And I should have behind the scenes, this is the repository, and that issue should be created in a moment. So let me see now. If I head back over here, do a bit of a refresh. I've now remediated the insufficient testing coverage. In the iSchema repository, the semantic model provider. Cool, it's listed where it's going to do it. It's given checkboxes. Now that's fantastic. So I now have a process. Now, I'm not going to assign myself. I'm going to assign my Copilot. And off it will go. So it may take a little while, but ultimately, I haven't written any code here. Maybe I would have spent a little bit more time refining and reviewing that technical debt and asking a few conversations around the impact and what other things might change. But as you can see, that gives me a way to really think more deeply about the problems I'm trying to solve. And I also end up with persisting the documentation. So another thing I might have chosen to do there is for all the detected remediation, I might create new specification files or update the existing specification files to say, hey, we've got a specification file for the repository pattern. Can you please update that repository file with the additional work we want to do with the technique remediation? And we've then got the ability to say, compare the specification file with the current implementation and then create GitHub issues off the differences. If I head back over to, while that all works, and show you the GitHub issues from missing from specification, in this case, this is what we call a prompt file, which is think of as a template prompt. For agent mode, it creates GitHub issues for each requirement in a specification file that is not already implemented to the code base using the GitHub issue template feature request. So the cool thing is, this looks at the specification, you pass it, and here you can see it requires a specification file to be set or active. Usually you will have opened the specification file like that, and you'll run that particular prompt, and what that will then do is follow the instructions. So you must follow these steps, look at that, determine what's missing, what needs to be added, and it will then go and find out if an issue already exists in GitHub using the search issues. If it doesn't already exist, it goes and creates a new issue, or if it does exist, it might update it with additional context or requirements. All of that generates the issues that I can then assign to my Copilot agents. So this really gives me the ability to scan across my entire code base, identifying technical debt issues, janitorial work that needs to be done, creating those issues automatically, maybe doing a bit of refinement, and then nominating them to my coding agent. But let's go back and see where our coding agent's up to. So as you can see, Copilot coding agent created a PR for me. Cool, lovely. That's what I would expect it to do. So here is the PR. It's given it all the information, included all the information from the issue, how it's going to verify it, what it's going to do. And it's actually already started working, and we can watch it. So as you can see, it started work 3 minutes ago. So we can view the session. It doesn't automatically run CI/CD processes, any GitHub actions triggered to this. I actually have to approve those. That's really good, because what if it has changed those, GitHub Copilot actions, the workflows themselves? We don't just want to generically approve everything. So we're going to view the session. The session takes us over here. Now, keen-eyed, those of you with keen eyes will notice that this is actually running a GitHub Actions runner. It's in a runner. But it's executing a specialized GitHub Copilot code to facilitate that agent communication. Now, one other thing it's important to know, by default, these don't have any MCP servers except the core MCP server or core functions that GitHub Copilot provides. For example, if we look down here, back in Visual Studio Code now, and we look at these, we get all these built in. But if you wanted, say, Playwright in there, you will not get, Playwright is not available by default in this. So as I see, our Copilot is still working through things. It could take half an hour, could take an hour. You don't typically stay and watch this. It's kick it off, go do some other work, have a nap, have a coffee, go for a run, do whatever, and come back. Or set 10 of these off at once, right? That's the real value. But what we need to do is about MCPs is, if we choose to, we can go over here to Copilots under Settings, and we can, Copilot Agent, we can set up our MCP servers. So just the same format as here in Visual Studio Code, we can add all these MCP servers in. Obviously, what we need to care of is how we pass secrets like personal access tokens and API keys for external systems. You wouldn't necessarily want to give an MCP server full access to the kingdom. The other question is, if your MCP server is perhaps running in an internal environment, perhaps your business has created an MCP server that allows them to look up user documentation for your product. This MCP server wouldn't necessarily be able to go and get that documentation without some sort of a routing proxy, or some sort of you're exposing your MCP to the internet. And that brings a whole lot of different security questions for you. So these are things to consider. There's going to be, I'm sure, many different changes and improvements. This is still in preview. But if we go back over and have a look at what our busy pull request is doing and our coding agents, as you can see, it's still going. You will know it's in draft mode. It starts in draft mode, and it will actually say, "Hey, I'm ready." Once it won't change it to draft mode, but it'll tell me that it's ready for review once it's done. It'll also email me, I think, but I'm going to approve these workflows to run just without being too unsafe, and let them go, because it will evaluate those workflows against seeing the code has changed. You say passes your CI/CD. So as you can see, it's still working where it's up to. It's creating a comprehensive schema repository integration test. So cool. It's busy creating unit tests and integration tests, and it's done quite a lot, only showing the first 10,000. So, bit of a recap. I'm not going to wait for this to finish, because who knows, it could take quite some time. It's created in a separate branch, Copilot Fix 2. When I'm ready, I will do a traditional code review. One thing that's really important here, if I've got branch policies, even though Copilot created this work, I triggered it and I cannot be the sole reviewer on this. So it will not allow me to merge that code into main or into the parent branch because it was my Copilot that did the work, even though it's technically a different entity. So that doesn't break any of your existing code protection policies. That's really, really critical. It's important to know. So this is going to keep going. So what we'll do is we'll jump back and recap. So recapping quickly, I first started out with new chat modes. So implementing a new chat mode that was specifically designed to identify technical debt issues. Now, agent mode might have been able to do that. Other modes may have, custom prompts, prompt files might have been able to do that. But having a specific mode where all it does is that makes it very easy to simply just look at code or specify code and say, give me an assessment of technical debt. Janitor, tell me what I need to know. Is a very good way of just being in that right space. And then once you know what it looks like, once that you have an assessment, you can switch into agent mode and start working with that technical debt assessment, sending it out to GitHub issues or just writing the code directly or using it as a checklist, many different things you can do. Or call out, as I mentioned, there were the prompt files, which I think I may have mentioned in previous ones. Prompt files allow us a way to template, provide your own instructions. So you can put a slash and you don't just get clear list, you get all of these, your custom workspace prompt files, as you can see, which allow you to do very powerful tasks. My favorite one at the moment is the update AVM modules in Bicep, which allows me to simply ensure all modules in my Bicep are the latest versions, and it saves me so much technical debt remediation time. So hopefully that gives you some thoughts on where you could be going with this, how this technology could help you, and I'd love to hear what you're doing with it. What works for you? I am going to place all of these, all of the chat modes and prompts that I'm building up into a single repository, which I will share here, which is, of course, on my GitHub here. I will be sharing all of these, so I'd welcome anyone into this to use this, submit any your own ideas. I haven't really thought about structure yet, but there are so many ideas and possibilities coming to mind. Some form of library was needed, and I need a place to store it. But if you think of something better, a better way of doing this, please share. Well, I realize this has been a long one. Hopefully it's been useful. Hopefully you've got a few ideas what you might be able to do. Please just share it with me. I love to know what other people are doing with this stuff. It's moving so quickly. Well, have a great night. Thank you for sticking with me for this long. Take care.